Hello, thanks for joining me. I'm David Flowers, licensed professional counselor, and I work mostly with couples. And I want to talk to you today about an emotion that is just super toxic, right? It's like, out of all the toxic emotions, out of all the things that we know degrade relationships and ultimately predict actually divorce and separation, the one I want to talk to you about today is the most toxic. It's the one that will, break people up easier than anything else. And the reason I wanted to really talk about this today was because I've been reading a book about this lately, and I was thinking about the connection between this emotion that I want to talk to you about and the way that it destroys intimate relationships and the way that it's really that same emotion that is really growing inside of people in our society today that's really the cause of the kind of increasing separation and sense of alienation between people on different sort of political sides. So the emotion that I'm talking about is called contempt. Okay, and the best way to really think about contempt is that if you think about what criticism is, right, let's just kind of go on a hierarchy, right? Dr. John Gottman talks about kind of this hierarchy of kind of a complaint. If you're in a relationship, it's going to last, maybe 50, 60 years, who knows, right? Like a long time. You have to be able to complain to your partner. You have to be able to tell your partner things that you're not liking, things that hurt your feelings, and that kind of thing. So we call that complaint. Next level up from that, we're kind of going in order of increasing toxicity, right? Complaints are fine and necessary. We move past complaint into criticism. Criticism is where you take a complaint and it gets personal. So a complaint might be, hey, I'm really feeling kind of alone in running the household right now because I've had to take the garbage out for you like for the last 4 weeks in a row, and it's really something you need to be doing, and it's important to me that you stay on top of that. Okay, that would be a complaint. A criticism with that same issue would be something like, how come I can't depend on you? Right? You were not a very dependable person. You don't come through with your obligations. You don't do the things that you say you're going to do. Right? That would be criticism. Okay, so let's move to contempt now. An example of contempt in that same situation would be something like, you know what? I am so sick of you. You are so ridiculous and childish and irresponsible. And I'm completely sick of you, right? Contempt communicates, I have no use for you. I have no use for the thing that you want to talk about. I have no use for your opinions. Right? And we see that is just a super toxic thing that erodes relationships. And like I said, is the number one predictor of, breakup and divorce. Now think about what's going on in our country right now. You got contempt that happens in relationships where it's like, it's not simply, it bothers me that you're doing a certain thing, right? Contempt is you as a human being, like you make me sick, or I can't believe you're the kind of person who would do such and such thing, right? The universal symbol we know for contempt all across cultures, the research has been done by Dr. Gottman, and I'm going to show you the universal symbol of contempt, and I'm going to get close enough so you can really see it, all right? Universally, when somebody is feeling contempt, here's what it looks like on their face. That's what it is. It's this complete dismissal, right, of the validity or the possibility of validity in another person's perspective or opinion. And so certainly you can see the parallels, right, between what happens in relationships and how contempt is the number one eroder of intimate relationships and what we currently have going kind of in our politics right now. How we have the Democrats on one side and the Republicans on the other side. And it's not simply, hey, you know what? I don't agree with your views on policy. You know what I really disagree with? Or you know what makes me uncomfortable, right? That would be kind of the equivalent of a complaint, right? And we're not simply criticizing, right? Like, oh yeah, so you obviously haven't really done your homework, people say, right? Or done your research, so to speak, right? That would be criticism, okay? But we don't even do that, right? Like in our politics right now, we are going beyond complaint and we're bypassing criticism, and so often we're moving right to contempt, right? You are stupid, you're ridiculous, right? And even in a lot of cases, you're evil, and people who believe what you believe are evil, right? And you want to destroy America, okay? That is contempt. Okay, so in relationships, you are an awful person, right? I don't know why I put up with you. You make me sick, right? And in politics, in American life, we have, you hate America, you and the people on your side are what's responsible for all of our problems. And folks, you know what? I mean, it's happening on both sides of the aisle politically, right? I mean, it really is. Oh, you voted for so and so. Oh, you're the whole problem, right? Like, oh, your people are gonna, wow, what that leader did was just like Hitler. And you have people on both sides saying, yeah, that leader's just like Hitler. But folks, you know what? I think the reason I was thinking about contempt to do for this week's video is because of what's happened in Ukraine. I mean, there we see such an obvious example of a truly evil person. Of a person who truly, doesn't value other people, who doesn't care about others, and who is going to get his way regardless of what kind of damage he does. And so in America, we're saying that that's Bernie Sanders, right? Or we're saying that's Donald Trump. I mean, as much as your chosen villain in America may be unlikable to you or detestable to you, I mean, they are not a Vladimir Putin kind of character. And one thing I hope we can get out of this as a country is being able to put our own issues into some reasonable perspective. Right? Do we think that if we go to our spouse, to the person that we care about the most and love the most, and say, I was going to talk to you about how it bothered me that you didn't do the dishes yesterday, but then I got to thinking about it and I realized it would just be more effective if I tell you that you're an evil person because you never do the things that you're supposed to do. I don't know where we get that. But that's what we're doing. Boy, we're ramping up so much emotionally, getting more and more upset. So I've been reading this book lately too by Arthur Brooks. It's called Love One Another, and or Love Your Enemies. I'm sorry. It's called Love Your Enemies. Again, Arthur Brooks. And it really deals with this issue of just increasing polarization. Now, I'm a counselor, right? I didn't major in public policy or anything, but I think anybody can look around and see what's happening. I think probably almost everyone has been on the receiving end of some of these contemptuous statements. And probably a lot of us, I know I have been guilty of making those kinds of statements, especially, online where we feel anonymous or, feel undercover in some way. And one of my resolutions for 2022 is I'm going to learn how to stop doing that. Right? I'm going to do whatever I need to do to try and really root out contempt in my life. And so in his book, Brooks tells the story. He had a chance to meet with the Dalai Lama, right? And so he tells a story where he says to the Dalai Lama, he was talking about what's going on in our country, and says, what is the answer? When somebody treats you in a contemptuous way, what do you do? And the Dalai Lama says, you practice warm-heartedness, right? And Brooks says he just wanted, at that moment, he wanted to say, yeah, you got anything else, right? Because it's like, practice warm-heartedness. But, I had a small opportunity to do that even this morning. I have an ad that runs for this practice, right? And sends, videos out all over the place. I'm paying on Facebook for advertising, like thousands of businesses do. And I had a person I noticed this morning who simply commented on my ad, unsolicited, right? In other words, I didn't ask for this, right? But of course, nobody asks for any of the ads. And at first I was like a little hurt. And I was like, what's up with that? And I was thinking, do I comment? What do I say? And then I immediately thought, he's probably a really nice guy, right? He may not have meant by it what it felt like to me. I don't know. Maybe he's had a bad morning, right? And really, practicing warm-heartedness really starts with giving the person we disagree with the benefit of the doubt. Giving them the benefit of the doubt. It's such a simple thing, right? It's important that we do that with our fellow citizens in America if we're going to turn this around, and that everybody understands that it's not just the people on the other side, right? So that's the first thing, is giving people the benefit of the doubt. The second thing is really kind of stubbornly refusing to believe that the things that we disagree about fundamentally make the person we disagree with an evil person. In his book, Brooks talks about, he has a great spin on this, right? He talks about how, every time somebody makes some contemptuous statement about somebody who's on the other side of the political aisle from him, he said, the first thing I think about now is I think about my friends, my family members who are on that political side. And he said, I'm getting to where I'm taking that personally now. Not only am I trying to get away from expressing that kind of contempt for the other side, but now when somebody else does, I immediately think, wait a minute, you're talking about my parents, right? Or you're talking about my brother, about my sister, about my family, about my best friends, about my kids, right? Because surely everyone watching this video, and everyone who will watch it, and everyone in the country has friends, family members, associates, colleagues that are good people that they like, who are on the other political side. Do you really believe those are evil people? So rooting out contempt depends on making a decision that I'm not simply going to take that disagreement and that kind of red meat that keeps getting thrown to me by the most radical people in the media or in politics on my side. I'm not just going to keep allowing that, fuel, that fire to come out in all of these contemptuous ways, but I'm going to start thinking, wait a minute, they're talking about my friends, they're talking about my family. And yeah, although I don't agree with them, although some of their politics are bothersome and maybe even sometimes offensive, it's very different, isn't it? To say, I strongly disagree. It concerns me that you have these views. That's different than it is to say, you're a bad person. You're trying to destroy America. You're trying to destroy our relationship. If you really loved me, you would such and such. So I've just been thinking a lot about that. As I said, it's been a kind of almost a resolution for me, and a track that I'm on in my life right now. America will be a better place if all of us reject that. And relationships will certainly get a lot healthier as we learn, each of us, to just really deal with the reality of how corrosive contempt is, and learn how to express our complaints, the things that we object to or that hurt our feelings or bother us. Learn how to express those complaints to the people we love in ways that don't add fuel to the fire of contempt and further sort of divide us, and folks, that just never, it doesn't take us down a good road with relationships, and it's definitely not helping the state of our country. The last thing I was thinking about was that some of you know that I spent 22 years in ministry before I started doing full-time counseling. And so I remember preaching on several occasions. I remember talking to my congregation about love and saying, in our society, we have an idea of tolerance, right? Oh, we should tolerate people with other points of view. And I remember saying in my sermon, tolerance is horrible, right? I mean, really, I should tolerate someone. Do you want to be tolerated? And Brooks makes this point in his book, which I think is fascinating because I have said this for years, right? That, do you go to one of your good friends and say, oh, my partner and I, we are really learning to tolerate each other. Or I'm so glad that my partner tolerate. No, you don't want to be tolerated. You want to be loved, right? You want to be respected. You want to feel like even if somebody doesn't agree with you, that they make some kind of room for you, that they, on a fundamental level, assume that you are human instead of assuming that you are a monster. And we have to do that, certainly in our own personal relationships. Look, I've said this before. If you really honestly think your spouse, your partner is a monster, like you really think that's the kind of person they are, get out. Monsters are not people that you can rehabilitate. There's not a cure for that. An evil person is an evil person. So if you don't believe that your partner, at the root of who they are as a person, is evil, is bad, is looking to harm you, right? Doesn't want what's best for you, right? If you really believe that about them, there's not a lot of hope there. And there's not a lot of hope for a country where good people, your parents, your brothers and sisters, your colleagues, and mine, who are on the other side of the aisle, are just constantly assuming about each other that the other side is terrible and evil, wants to destroy America. It's ridiculous. It really is. And it's toxic, and we have to knock it off. I have a very small platform, right? All I can do is work on continuing to implement warm-heartedness in my own life, right? To try to love people, which is not agreeing with them, not being excited about all of their ideas. Loving people is really just affirming their basic humanness, right? And treating them in a way that is human instead of with derision. Oh, we got the libs, we're just, those stupid libtards or those ridiculous, Trumpites or, come on, it's just, we've got to get away from it. And what's the answer? Like Arthur Brooks' book talks about, the answer is to love your perceived enemies, not to tolerate them, right? I mean, even if we did that from where we are now, it would be a start, but not to tolerate people, right? But to learn to love people, to learn to not be part of this toxic, contemptuous back and forth that's constantly going on. So I guess I just wanted to talk about that today because it ties in, to my ministry roots, and what I said to people about, we don't want to be tolerated. We want to be loved, cared about. We want to be respected on a fundamental level. We want to have a right to have the feelings and perspectives we have without other people assuming that we are bad people for having them. Right? So I wanted to cover that also, obviously, because of the way it intersects with relationships and how it is so toxic there. It is the number one thing we look for, signs of contempt in a relationship that helps us predict divorce. So if you've got that going on, if you see those rolling eyes, if your partner does that to you, you guys do that a lot to each other, you're probably in much, much bigger trouble than you realize. And I really recommend that you reach out and get some help. All right, I'm going to have a link to that book and probably just some other things in the description for this video today. I've probably gone on way too long. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget all the stuff, right? Like this Facebook business page, my website, davidflowerstherapy.com. My blog is there. You can subscribe to that. Any way you want to be part of this journey with me, I would really appreciate. Thanks again so much for tuning in. I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.